Good evening and welcome to another community forum. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, and my co-host, Chris Diali. Good evening all. Chris.
Good evening, Byron, and good evening to our viewers. It's a pleasure again to be here with you guys, especially coming into their rooms.
It's another Wednesday, Chris, another Wednesday evening. Again, the week goes so rapidly, so quickly, but I had to go straight to this, Chris.
Yeah.
You know, on the news tonight, I heard something that I'm not comfortable with. Under the rules governing carnival, males cannot impersonate female. In other words, you can't wear heels and dress to look like a woman. But you can, if you're a woman, you can dress and impersonate a male. You know, something's wrong here, Chris.
There seems to be equity when it comes to the sexes and this particular law.
It's not fair. You know, it's not. It's not. I have a good friend from St. Patrick's who traditionally, a J'ouvert morning, portrays himself as a woman.
Yeah.
Beautiful woman, I should say. I mean, he could be arrested now if he does that.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes these laws are there, and we have to take it in the context of carnival.
Yeah.
Especially in J'ouvert. J'ouvert, we do a lot of impersonations to carry out social messages or to political message and so on. So, I mean, in my years of witnessing carnival, I've never seen a male who impersonates a woman get arrested for doing it.
No,
so obviously, yes, the law is there, but I suppose there's discretion in the application of the law when it comes to J'ouvert and those type of activities.
I hope so. I'm not going to take the chance though, Chris.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a one that deals with police and military people that you can't dress in their fatigues and so on. So that is probably more serious than the one with the woman. But I agree with you, there should be equity. If a man could do it, why a woman can't do it?
You know? But here, listen to the police, zero tolerance, you know, like weapons, you know, so...
no, I mean, that is absolutely agree with that.
And I like that.
And I think the police, I will hope that they put on more search and seizure type operations because the amount of things they've been finding in vehicles and among people in the vehicles, passengers of the vehicles, in terms of offensive weapons. It's amazing. We're going out to Lime and we're going at all types of things to damage and maim people, which is, I mean, out of context, in my view. And it tarnishes the whole celebration because I think the celebration is about having fun and, you know, and enjoying yourself. And when you see these kind of actions, I mean, I'm in full support of the Royal Grenada Police Force in doing these things. And not only that, losing these people with these offensive weapons for the next 48 hours if they can under the law.
And apparently that's what they're going to do. They're going to just pick you up, keep you in the cell until carnival is over.
Yeah, well, I mean, I support that as well.
Chris, I always touch a little bit on agriculture. You know, it's my kind of thing, you know. Cocoa, this is an important subsector. The last report, current report update, is that there are some issues there. First of all, the industry experienced a drop in production of almost 25%, 23%. In fact, the numbers, you're looking at this decrease move from significantly less, about 320,000 pounds less in terms of production. So with that, you had about 261 less farmers, a reduced fewer farmers supplying cocoa to the sector. So major, and I think St. David's and St. George those two parishes was a major, where the reduction came from primarily. And compounding that, you had like a net loss in the sector of over $850,000. So overall, when you look at that, that's not good. The production is clearly on a significant decline. I just think that this amount, 23%, is major, it's significant. But I think the positive aspect of all of this, though, is that they have invested a bit in the added value with J'ouvert, and under the Agricom project, they have they'll be doing a smaller chocolate bar and a milk chocolate at Mount Horn, actually, you know. So they've also invested in a restaurant at Victoria. So these are some good things, but which are kudos, you know.
So let me ask you, Byron, because it is concerning, particularly in St. David's, and because St. David's was cited as one of the parishes with a high quality cocoa because of the lack of some particular chemical in the cocoa that gives the value at a good quality. Are we seeing, are the issues because of labor issues? Are the issues because of management? I know you have a board in cocoa that is I don't want to use, very mature. And probably, is there no an opportunity for the government to have conversations with the Cocoa Association to see how we could revamp and do things differently? I mean, it's a different environment and different world. We need younger, I mean, we talk about transformation. Here is an opportunity to transform that sector and get down to the issues.
True. Well, I see a number of issues. Labor is one, certainly, but you have a number of abandoned fields. You know, you have the aging farmer, which is one aspect of it. The incentive in terms of the price, for example, are issues, you know.
So it's not about climate and disease. It's just about fields not being productive because it's not being worked.
Yeah, I think so, most of it. But also a part of it could be management also in terms of you mentioned, you know, how can that be remedied, or what is the strategic outlook? What is the medium long-term outlook? I've not seen or heard about a strategic kind of plan, so to speak. In other words, what we need to take us to the next stage. I think they put a lot of emphasis on the investment, and that's good, but that's not going to save the industry. You know, you need to look at production.
Well, you know, Byron, I have always been very critical about Nutmeg.
Yeah.
Because I am one that believes that the board in Nutmeg needs to be revamped, and I'm probably going to extend the same thing to Cocoa Association. Probably there's time to change some of the players, some of the guys who have been there for umpteen years. Yeah. And I don't believe you have to be a farmer to be a member of the board. No. I always argue that point. Yeah. And I believe that is one of the things that's stymifying these associations, in that we're not getting creative, we're not getting young, energy, intelligent young people to try things differently, change the marketing concept and all of that. Yeah. And at the same time, protect the farmers, because the farmers need protection in terms of insurance. They need protection in terms of insurance for their crop and for their livelihood. And when they retire, what's happening? They don't have any pension, I mean, apart from if they're paying NIS. So there's so much things that could be done there to protect the farmer. And then we need to incentivize young people. Could we do the cocoa thing differently? I know they buy wet cocoa now and not to move the trees.
They still can buy, you can still supply them with dry cocoa. But the major issue also, Chris, is that, which has been addressed from previous administration. I don't know the status or the nature of the dialogue now with the present administration regarding the merger of the associations. What the farmers have pointed out very clearly is that the question of the assets and its ownership must be settled first before there is a merger. But clearly, the farmers are the same. You find, like myself, I'm a member of the GCNA, I'm a member of GCA, both cocoa and nutmeg. You have two administrations, two marketing, two finance. So it makes sense, in my view, logically, from an economic point of view and business point of view, to merge these operations.
Well, you know, Byron, I was part of that merger talks. I went all around the country talking about this merger and the benefits of it, yes.
Okay.
And I am yet to understand what is the resistance, because merging of the assets or determining the value of the assets is easy to do. Yeah. And there were a lot of formulas put forward that when the assets and you get an understanding, farmers will be given the opportunity to have shares in the new merged organization with all the bigger asset base. Yeah. So it becomes a more valuable share option for you. So I think that is just excuses in my view, and I want to be controversial here. I think this merger should have happened many years ago. The advantages to me far outweigh the disadvantages, and sometimes hard decisions need to be taken so that people can understand what it is. Yeah. Because as you say, you have two administrations, two set of costs, and it's two commodity items that traditionally over 60, 70 years, we haven't seen any major change and
owners are the same. You
find when you watch at the nutmeg pool in Guave, it's the same thing since 19 when. And the conditions for the workers there is ridiculous. So I mean, it's just, I don't want to get emotional about it.
Okay, Chris, don't.
So let's go to my couple things. I saw NIS amendment got approved this last week in Parliament, and I support the amendments, by the way. I think that we need to get to a place where our social services are viable and is available to pay pensioners and young people who are coming into the scheme. I noticed the penalties have increased for non-compliance in the amendment, and our age goes to 65 by 2029, and our contributions to 16% by 2031, what we contribute. But I just wanted to compare. I did a comparison, and I saw recently in Barbados, Barbados's Social Security is moving their age of retirement to 68. And not 65. Whoa. And of course, I suspect their contributions will increase as well. So it appears that all social security service businesses in the region are having difficulty. Trinidad is having as well. Barbados, a more vibrant economy than ours, and so on. And There is the unemployment benefit part of it, which they have introduced, which is a good thing, and which, as a matter of fact, the IMF report spoke to. That is something they'd like to see happen. So I think that is a good thing for us in the country. Yes, we may think it's but we have an issue with young people coming in.
Question, did the new bill take into effect increases to pensioners based on the rate of inflation or any of that?
It wasn't mentioned in the amendments, but I believe that you are going to get increases based on your contributions to the scheme over the years.
Okay.
So you would see some of that happening.
Okay.
Quickly, the IMF report, I think I read it. It was a good report for the country. We had a good report. They did mention a few things that we need to pay attention to, some near-term downside risks like slowdown in tourism from possibly because of what is happening in the Europe and the US and so on. A slowdown in CBI because what have happened in Europe and what the UK is just done with the visa situation and so forth. That is probably going to affect our projected growth for 2023. They are projecting 3.9%, 4%. I think our government had it at 4.1 or something like that. Minor, but I mean, something there. They compliment to them on the continued trajectory with debt being reduced and coming down, and hopefully we're going to get to 60% of the general GDP. Of course, the Algeria debt is still something of concern. So that was the IMF report. The World Bank just gave government $30 million for climate resilience and as a credit facility and to deal with the environmental issues. And I want to say here that I think I just saw recently that Republic Bank had a Facebook announcement with the entire roof in a PV.
I saw that.
In PV panels.
That. Awesome.
And it's awesome. And I mean, I think that is a big thing for the private sector, that this is one company leading the way.
Because the cost of these panels are going down. Yeah?
That's right. And I mean, it helps in the environmental issue. And I think government now offers, they offer concessions and people who bring in panels and going that way. I want to see us go to the next direction. I heard the Minister of Transport tonight talk about the issues of transport in Grenada, and it's owned by the private buses. And I keep saying, Senator Humphrey had said it years ago, that we need to have the public transport service alongside the private, as it works in Trinidad, it works in Barbados. But I want to see us go to electric vehicles.
Yes.
That is part of the environment. And I hope
that's going to be transformational.
In that $30 million credit facility that we get in, that is to help with other things, and the environment, we look at that.
Yes.
So put some of the public buses.
Because I want to tell you that, yes, I agree, electricity, even government vehicles. In 2022, part of the budget was that government would introduce half of the fleet would be electric vehicles.
Well, what about putting panels on the roof?
On the roof.
All the government buildings. So, I mean, those are things that we will hope to see come forward. You know, we keep, the last one I wanted to mention was I saw the minister in Parliament and her discussion regarding the most recent strike. The only thing I didn't agree with the minister on, in her, you know, when you're in labor and you do conciliation, you go to mediation, the sides don't have to accept the recommendations. She gave the impression that a recommendation was made through the mediation process, and there was a thinking that they had to accept it.
In mediation, though, mediation can in fact resolve the matter. Both parties can agree there.
That's right. Exactly. But you don't have to.
You don't have to.
No, that is different to other high court mediations that you do where you get an agreement. Or if you do an agreement, the sides go back. The only time you could force a decision is when you go to arbitration, and in that case, the sides agree that whatever the arbitrator
is binding
on them. So I thought she didn't carry that message right. I thought the Prime Minister talked when he spoke about it before, about the 30 days and things getting resolved in 30 days. It's an excellent thing. And I did say here that I think where we need to move the labor laws is to have an arbitration pool of people set up under the law, because when you're essential service, the minister has the power under the current act to mandate arbitration because you're essential service and the importance.
That's correct.
And when they had the one with Port Authority, she didn't.
Banking is not essential.
No, she didn't do that, and Port Authority is essential, and she didn't invoke her power under the law. So I'm just saying, there's things that I think we need to get, you know, and get them clearer for the labor climate in Grenada to be.
Because we need, and in fact, I just want to say that we have a special guest coming in, particularly representing the private sector, Chris. Yes, that's correct.
Should have been in the Chamber of Industry and Commerce.
That's correct. We'll take a short break here. Before we take this break, however, I want to say that viewers, I'm asking our people, Chris, to be mindful of a lot of fake news on social media. Fact check. do some background on it. Don't pass it on. You're being irresponsible when you do this. Check it out first. But we take a short break here and we'll be right back with our special guest this evening. Stay with us.
Concerned about your general health and wellness?
Do you need to know your complete blood count, lipid profile, or HbA1c?
Maybe you need to get a renal, thyroid, or liver function test.
Interested in STI screening for HIV, syphilis, herpes, chlamydia, or gonorrhea?
All of these tests, plus hundreds more, are available at Allied Laboratories.
Allied Laboratories welcomes you. You can find us here on Gladstone Road in Grenville, in the building next to Calico, on the second floor, adjacent to Dr. Isaac's office. Or you can find us here on Grand Anse Main Road, adjacent to South Winds, opposite the entrance of Excel Plaza. Contact our Grenville branch at 410-3488 or 419-1588 or send us an email at alliedlabgrenville@gmail.com. You can contact our Grand Anse branch at 403-3488 or 404-3488 or send us an email at alliedlabstgeorge@gmail.com.
Fit for life and Allied Laboratories. We're taking care of Grenada.
Welcome back to Community Forum. This evening, as Byron mentioned earlier, we have a very special guest with us this evening to talk about things private sector, regionally and locally. Her name is Miss Pettifer Lewis. She's an MBA qualified in management studies. She's an event planner. She has been the executive director of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce for plenty years, many years.
Wow.
And of course, she worked in the public service and that have done a lot of private issues, private jobs in different areas. So we welcome Pettifer this evening to our program because she is one of two ladies that have just been appointed to Carrie Cham.
Carrie Cham.
Carrie Cham. Pettifer is the president and her deputy is also a lady. So something of our ladies breaking glass ceilings. I want to say the proverbial glass ceilings. But Pettifer, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris and Byron. Thank you for having me. Good night to your audience.
Right, so Pettifer, I want to blast off with you and talk about Carrie Cham and the fact that Carrie Cham is relatively new to us in the region, basically because before we had CAIC, Caribbean Association of Industry and Commerce, which I believe Carrie Cham has succeeded. So give us a little about Carrie Cham, this new organization and its role and the intention.
Carrie Cham, well, as you said, Carrie Cham is new. We have had the CAIC, as you mentioned, and that, as you know, having been there before, was not quite changing with the times, so it became a bit of a dinosaur, and then a vacuum was created. And after a while, Chambers found that it was necessary for us to take a go at it again and come together. So in 2019, actually it was the 1st of April, no pun intended, right? That 13 chambers came together for sign a MOU to collaborate in Barbados. And since then, we have grown to 25 chambers right across the Caribbean.
So it's CARICOM oriented and not just OECS, because we have OECS.
It's OECS, is CARICOM, is CARIFORUM, is Caribbean.
Okay, good.
Yes, it's not limited to CARICOM.
And tell us about some of the, I don't want to know the structure, but some of the things that you believe you can focus on regionally that, that we see as issues in the region. And do you guys have a seat in CARICOM as how CIC used to have a seat to go and articulate on behalf of the private sector?
It's a very good question, Chris. Well, it's a very political one. And I'll answer you this way. No, we don't. Right? And the question before was what we see as we have.
Probably just give us in short and medium.
We have identified 5 pillars that we're working on. We have disaster risk reduction, trade and transport, logistics is very, very dear to us in the region. We look at also advocacy, membership, value, and sharing best practices, because what we find, especially since COVID has opened up a lot of avenue in terms of progress that we could make. Of course, some people look at it had a downside, but it has some real positives. So for example, Zoom, we use a lot. So we do a lot of training, and we try to maximize resources. So for example, instead of Grenada putting on the same training as Trinidad or Barbados, we will share. If you put it on training, we share it throughout the region.
And do it digitally?
Yes, and we do it digitally. And for example, right now, the Energy Chamber has some training courses that they do all the time. Some of it is online, some is hybrid, and things like that. Trinidad, yes, the Energy, yes. And we have, one of the things that we're very proud of is what we call the Center of Excellence. Is a project that we had where we focus on disaster risk reduction, but is about making MSMEs, small micro-scale businesses, enterprises more resilient. So you familiar that most of our small, micro, medium enterprises have difficulty with getting loans from the bank. And while you might say that access to finance is a problem, you know that it's much deeper than that. It's a question of how prepared are they, their records, their plans, etc. And so we have over 100 subjects in 5 thematic areas where MSMEs could access the information free of cost. It's downloadable. So you have business resilience, planning, finance, marketing, everything. And if there are some who are not able to download and use the material effectively, the chambers will provide training and support for them.
Okay,
so that's major, right through the region. As a matter of fact, we shared it with Latin America as well, because we got support from the Arise community, UPS Foundation, as well as United Nations Office for Disaster Reduction.
I'll come back to you on the seat in CARICOM, but...
What kind of
Chris, you always like...
I want to join Chris in congratulating you on being the chair of CARICHAM, the Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce. That's a big deal for us, particularly a woman, a Grenadian, and our local chamber. Kudos. And this is something that has bothered me, this issue, because when we look at the Caribbean region, and this, when I say the region, it represents a slightly larger population than the one where your organization, CARICHAM, represents. But still, when you look at the Caribbean region, you're looking at a market of about 27 million people, collectively importing about 21 billion US imports from the US, and this is 2018. We're the third after Mexico and Brazil. But here's the thing, we recognize though that trade plays an important employment generation, particularly in small open economies like ours, clearly in the Caribbean. So it raises the demand for labor, it also generates higher quality jobs, particularly for export, than the production for local markets, I know this. But how can the region, and Grenada, we could narrow it, increases exports? What are the challenges? And particularly for your membership in the local chamber, because this would be more familiar with, the export part of it. How can we, what are the challenges there?
Baron, let me answer you this way. The challenges that we have here is not unique. One, we have the challenge of transportation and logistics in terms of moving goods around. It's easier for you to get goods from Miami, not just get goods from Miami, in terms of moving around the Caribbean. Within the region. It's a challenge. You go for a one-day meeting and you spend 4 or 5 days. And at times, you are left on the airport without any information as to when you will be getting home. You know, with American or JetBlue, you jump, you know exactly where you're going, what. We cannot move forward unless we address these issues.
And that's just passenger, you're talking about commodities.
Yeah, that's passenger and commodities as well.
I don't want to get there. I mean, I ain't a serious exporter as my company, so I mean, I know the challenges better for talking about.
Byron.
So this is a deterrent then for producers.
Yes. Also, in terms of information, we have operated in silos. You know, the water that surrounds us, rather we've seen it as connecting us, we see it as separating us. We don't know what each country really produces. I'll give you a little example. And also, we also think about competition. Everything is competition. Now, I'll just give you one little example. St. Vincent produces dasheen, supplies Barbados. They also export outside of the region, right? They are not able to fulfill the demand for Barbados. So there's a little gap. Why can't we top it up? That's just a little example.
But you know, and probably I could help answer that question. I shouldn't be helping answer.
But he has been in it for donkey years, so he knows.
Because you see, it impacts on our employment, generation.
Yeah, but Byron, you know, in farming, one of the issues we have is production planning.
Yes.
And consistency of supply. So if Barbados say they want a 20-foot container every 6 weeks, we can't supply. We may be able to do one. Remember the fiasco we spoke about a few weeks ago, the mangoes?
Yes.
And this is part of the issue that we face in these countries. It's easier for me to ship a container of paint to every country in the OECS, but I can't get a less than a container load of big bulk to move. And the freight I will pay on a big bulk is so ridiculous that it's cheaper for the customer to take a 20-foot. I mean, and that's some of the other challenges that we face.
Port.
And we could go into the port and the charges and so. But even with that,
and efficiency.
mean, it shows that if you have a small island that can't take a full container, what happens to our farmers if it's produce we want to send, or any other commodity? There is no transport. And Pettifer spoke about the movement of people, and I think our Prime Minister mentioned it the last time when they met in CARICOM, had a thing in Trinidad. And we have been discussing that for umpteen years. COVID showed us when Riyadh went, how important Riyadh was. You understand? And to have a regional transport airlift service. And we don't have it in freight, we have it in people, but many of these airlines don't take goods from customers to get to islands quickly. And, you know, the whole transport thing is just...
But is the investment there also for these businesses, would we say? I mean, in Grenada case, what the World Bank report, IMF report, stated that the banks are very liquid.
Liquid, exactly, and that has been there for a while.
The resources are there, but is the policy of the financial institutions favorable to these investments?
Well, financial institutions will argue that they will support any project that comes properly presented and shows viability. No, you cannot have, look at the fiasco we face with transport between Grenada and Caribbean. Remember that is another fiasco for us in terms of when the airplane moves and when the boat moves. It used to be daily. It came down to 2 or 3 times a week, and then government had to intervene. And it seems as though we're not understanding that the formula must be a mix of private and public. Or else these transport movers would not make it. It would have paid. Right? So I think we've been talking enough. Time for us to come up with a formula to solve the issue, and I hope CARICOM could come up with some sort of, and that's why I want to go back with the seat at CARICOM.
Well, actually, I have had discussions with ministers from other islands in terms of CARICOM, and they say that CARICOM should have a seat in CARICOM.
Oh, kudos.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to be there under the old one,
Yes.
we used to go to CARICOM, but prime ministers normally didn't like to hear us because we were critical.
Yeah.
And we understand the ministers and the prime ministers have a political agenda as well.
Yes.
But we have a private sector agenda.
Yeah.
And the reality of it in the region is that private sector firms don't wait on government. You know, if we want to go in a market, we go in and we do what we have to do.
That's correct.
And then we wait on government to create the environment for us and go and negotiate and so on.
Yeah.
But you cannot always be waiting
Yeah.
on the government conditions to be created. And I think the same approach, but it is important to have a seat at CARICOM so that they could hear the challenges that we face
It's a big deal.
as a region and otherwise. As you say, the problems are common.
It will come.
Yeah, great.
We
It will
look
come.
forward to this.
We have to change the way we do business, the way we interact with government, because we seem to think that government is on one side, private sector is on the other side, and who's suffering in the middle? We need to come together and work out the solutions.
So but if you talk about government, here we have a case situation. 1 year in office, the government. Tell us, what are your members saying about the business environment 1 year into the administration? Are there consultation going on? Are you inputting into policy? What is your membership saying about things so far?
I could tell you what the membership have been saying and doing. The membership have been involved in a number of consultations. We had all the consultations that the government had, the minimum wage, the NIS, the bus, the
Traffic light.
they have always engaged the private sector. From where I sit, have organized numerous consultations so that the private sector could give their
Are you seeing the
input.
results of the inputs and the consultation, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's not a question of just consulting for the sake of seriously take the information that have been given. And the rate at which we have been asked to get people together and people have been sharing, I think it's really good. It's really good.
I want to ask you a question. We had a panelist, one of our programs, that spoke about the social compact. So we were talking disaster and what needs to happen in disaster and the amount of parties that need to be involved. And he mentioned that we should look at, the social compact being a medium or mechanism through which handling of issues nationally in case there's a disaster because of some system or something that passes through. Is there any indication from the government, from where you sit in the private sector, that social compact will be something that they will consider doing again, as the last government and government before?
I think, I don't want to quote him, I don't want to say incorrectly, but what I think I remember is that the Prime Minister did say that he was going to look at it favorably. I mean, I have not heard more about it, but it's not something I think that he had discarded, right? My concern, more than just the social partners engagement, is the disaster preparedness.
Yeah.
In terms of how well prepared we are and the linkages and the connections and how effective that we could be. I am not really satisfied that we are where we could be. When we look back at what we experienced with Ivan, I think there's a lot. Although I know that there are some aspects of preparation, which is the whole question of building code, build back better. Remember we had that, and revisiting the people who look at the buildings and authorizing that. As you know, physical planning, etc. As you know, the whole question of boards have been constituted very differently than from before, in terms of transforming and having people, the same issue that you gentlemen were just speaking of in terms of having boards. You talk about the constitution of the board. How do you determine who sits on the board? What is the expertise that you require on the board? No, it's different in that people are chosen because based on their experience, their expertise. Also, it's not left there. People are being trained. So people are being certified to be on statutory boards and committees. And I think you need to take a little page in that book.
I want to, I mean, Chris, I want to endorse this policy. I think it's very progressive. The fact that directors coming on board now are being put through or taking courses in directorship, understanding that accreditation, being accredited directors is very, very important. And so you're on a board, and the fact that they've opened up directorship to nationals overseas using technology and Zoom. So I think kudos. This is excellent. But going forward, Peter, we're talking about the business environment. You have policy framework, government policy framework. You have issues of energy and the overall economic environment. I will assume that these factors are critical for any business, your membership. But there are new factors now coming on board. The question of climate change, the factor of AI, that is artificial intelligence. And not to elaborate on it, but just briefly that AI changes the whole scope of the environment. Climate change is also a major factor. I'm not going to take, but what are your thoughts on the implications for businesses now in the future? Is your membership taking these factors on board in their planning, in their strategic thinking going forward?
Actually, Byron, that's one of, remember I said we added some pillars?
Yeah.
Cybersecurity and AI.
Yeah.
Added 2 additional that we included in our pillars because we think it's very important, it's current, and we cannot continue to operate how we have been operating before, especially knowing that 70 to 80% of the composition of our economy throughout the Caribbean is micro and small, who are very much exposed to that. And yeah. So that is a crucial one that we have to know. I know that there are some organizations who are looking more in terms of efficiency with energy, but more and more that conversation of cybersecurity and AI is coming up. And we have plans in CARICHAM to address those and to educate our members in that regard.
So I want to throw something on your agenda when it comes to energy and environment and climate change. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in PERC and the regulations under PERC and the act under PERC, because a lot of us in the private sector who would like to do what Republic Bank just did with their roof will have issues because of the regulations under PERC and how it facilitates us in the private sector.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that I could show that on your president, Mr. John, on his agenda and his radar.
You could show
So
whatever
that
you
we
want on the president.
look at, but the other issue I want to
Wait, before you
out-
move on,
Yeah.
let me just respond to that.
Yeah.
Currently, you see, you just absent yourself from the loop.
He did?
Yes. I'll expose
Chris, I
him
mean,
on
my-
national TV.
What's-
You understand?
Why, Chris? I mean, that's reckless
I
behavior.
wouldn't comment.
It's reckless behavior. The energy policy, that is being looked at currently. We have a consultant that is supported by USAID who is facilitating consultation because we requested that. So she would be engaging with the various sectors to discuss the policy, and then we'll have, hopefully between early or mid-September, a national consultation where all the stakeholders would come, and we'll have technocrats from the government to come and present and address issues so that they could get feedback from the private sector, which will help inform the policy a bit more.
Yes. I mean, it's critical for us in the private sector because it's always been sorry, we in the private sector complain about, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's service providers, or whatever the case may be, because the cost of energy, when we used to compare ourselves to Trinidad and other jurisdictions, inflated our prices, so export became difficult for us to challenge and to compete. So that is now going to even the playing field to some degree, if all of us could get into PV. But I wanted to throw one other thing at you, and that was the pension issue. That is a big topic for us in Grenada. And what is happening is the private sector included in the consultations regarding that, or the committee that is formed?
Yes. From the actuarial reviews, a number of them before, the private sector have been engaged, and the private sector continues to be engaged in that conversation.
Yeah, that is a critical thing for us
of
moving
course.
forward, and the cost to the country.
Pedro, so here you're the executive director of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce. But I am operating a small business in Siltes, in Backstreet, yeah? Struggling, trying to produce.
Low tongue, you know, to go back.
Low tongue, okay. How can the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce help me, direct me, assist me? What services, tangible services, is available through the chamber that can enhance my business? Give me hope.
Give you hope.
Yeah.
There are a number of things. One, training. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of getting your act together, right? We also have arrangement with the banks where once you go through certain training, like we have a training we call Design Thinking to Develop a Business. We have from starting from the ground. We also have for people who are already in business so that they can improve.
You do this electronic? You do this
we do it
side?
both
Okay.
virtual
Okay.
and physical. Depends on what it is that that is required.
Okay.
But of course, when we have the physical, the energy is much better. There's a lot more exchange, and ideas are generated, and people share and will improve on your idea because you have more.
But I must be a member of the association.
Byron, you back in history, right? Before, we try as much to do for our members, but we recognize that it is important to provide service not just for our members. When we provide, everybody wants to know what's in it for me. When you provide services that people value, that incentivize them to be members.
All I have to do is to call the chamber.
You just call
the
us. We
chamber.
have training.
So
we also would have networking. And we're working a lot more on micro, small, and medium enterprises.
I will add one thing, because I've been part of this for a long time. The cost of advocacy that the chamber puts on, whether you're a member or not, is highly undervalued in the country.
True.
So the chamber, we may have small businesses have an issue with, let's say, VAT, and something with VAT. And they will come to chamber and say, listen, we're not members, but this is a problem, and so on. Chamber will take it on the agenda, the president or a team on the board, and go to government and represent this issue, because we may see it not only for small, it may affect the wider business community. And we do that, and that is free of cost. We don't charge.
But the chamber have always been seen as representing big business, you know?
That is correct.
I don't know. That's why I asked the question about, I operate in a small business in Low Street.
And that's why I'm getting to you about that, because
so how,
we years ago, Pettifer will tell you, we asked small businesses to form themselves into a unit so they could come to us as a unit, because it's difficult to have 10 businesses all coming with different issues. If you could form yourself into a unit, that unit becomes a member of the chamber. And so we articulate on behalf of them. But it goes, as I say, Brian, it goes beyond that. If we have a national issue on income tax, and small businesses are required to pay this, let's say, stamp tax, and we had an issue when we negotiated rates for stamp tax, we didn't do it for just big business.
Yeah, Chris and I were on the
it was
the
done for
committee,
all business.
all businesses.
And we don't advocacy in any other environment. You have lobbyists in the US that charge huge money to get issues through to the senators and so on. We don't do that here. We have a chamber that says, listen, come to us if you think you may not be a member, but the issue is national cost cutting. we go and articulate for everybody. And we advocate for everybody.
And we have also introduced a rate of $100 for entire
So I can
year.
join this little
For
business,
entire
this
year,
small
for
business,
a year.
but in the
How much
absence,
beers? How much beers are you getting with that, Byron? For how long?
in the absence of an association of small business, my small business, I can join the chamber directly.
Anybody
Yes,
who
yes.
has
The Grenada,
interest.
the GIDC is a statutory body. It is set up to enhance, support business development in Grenada generally. What is your relationship with the GIDC in terms of a collaboration, and they have a focus on business development? And there's a second part of the question, Pettifor.
You have a lot of second parts to your
Second part of the
questions, you know,
question.
Byron.
Second part of the question is, we know that the ease of doing business is no longer done by the IMF or the World Bank, whoever did it before, because it proved to be bonus. But still, what is your sense of the ease of doing business in Grenada? What challenges does businesses have in setting up? What are the bottlenecks, if any?
I would say for imports and exports, it would be the facilitation in terms of the whole question of the port, the Articular system where everybody is not on to get to do one-stop shopping, the whole question of registering business for new businesses, to register, get your NIS number, get your tax ID, everything without having to go to different places. We really need to move. I mean, Inland Revenue has been doing a lot of work
Yeah.
to give them that in terms of online. But we
Correct.
still have certain areas
So
that
on a
doesn't
scale of 1
quite
to 10,
fall-
where do you put it?
Put what?
Well, the ease
Ease
of
of
doing
business,
yeah.
we are at about 4.
We still.
I didn't
we
ask
still-
you, Chris.
we-
Yeah, we're at about 4.
the-
4.
Yeah. Because the biggest problem is the legal side with the registry
Whoa.
and the registering a business. The lawyers will do their work and you could set up the business and register. But when it comes to opening bank accounts and the drama they put us through in the financial sector for that, in other jurisdictions it's much easier. And you have all of these little things.
Chris,
but-
the field is not level.
That's right.
Because the banks that we have here, foreign owned, and not just that, they, what they put through from outside of the region for you to open an account, you could go into the US and
That's
just
right.
have one little ID and open an account. So in terms of the ease of doing business, is not something that is necessarily on our part in terms of what we need to do. Some of it, yes. But this thing that Chris just talking about with the banks, I mean, I have been trying. I want, by the way, Grenada won the vote for CARICHAM to be registered, headquartered here
Here?
in Grenada.
Hey, kudos.
Whoa,
kudos.
yeah.
Nice.
Right? I've been trying to get to open a bank account and to get information and
Yeah, and I don't want to go down there because I was in Parliament when all these laws came through, and I was part of it, so I don't want us to go there. But it is problematic, and that's why the ease of business index was abolished
It was abolished, yeah.
because it was quite frankly nonsensical to use because people will come and they will come with experiences in the US and come here and say, but what's happening with you guys?
yes, yes.
And then when you tell them it's not our fault, it's the same US imposed on us.
Imposed on us.
Yes.
So they got to recognize that that was a ridiculous index to look at. You know, so those are the
Also, who
challenges.
they were asking to answer the questions, they didn't have any idea of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
What is your relationship with the GIDC in terms of your collaboration from a business development point of view?
We have a relationship, we have a good relationship with GIDC, right? We have had talks of collaboration.
Are you on the board?
We're supposed to be, but we're not.
You're supposed to be, but you're not.
Yes, the requirement is for,
Private
or
sector.
maybe I should rephrase that.
Yes. Okay, rephrase it.
I'm not sure.
Okay, you're not sure. You're not sure. You're not sure. Yeah, that's fine with me. I put it for here.
But hold on.
I have a position
Yeah.
on the Grenada Investment Development Corporation board, the private sector,
Yes, right.
and most likely the chamber.
Yes.
But the issue we have always had with governments in the past, governments try to want to choose our representative for us. And we are the ones that's supposed to choose our representative and recommend to government that's who we want. So if Pettiford want to say it, I go say it.
No, but
That has been, remember what I say.
That is the case.
Remember what I say.
That's
I'm
not
not
the
saying
case.
that is the case too, but I'm saying
That's not the
generally,
case.
we have a position on the board
Yeah.
that is normally filled by a private sector rep. But
right.
the issue is, and it's not just, I'm not saying this government is doing it, but other governments in the past used to do that as well.
also.
So we used to always have to challenge them on some of these
We
things.
have, I would say, the government in the past we have had where we were asked to send more than one, and we pull up on that, right?
Yeah.
And we have had situations where some boards, you have people representing that you didn't recommend,
Right.
but you have also had where you recommended and they accepted.
So the status
So,
quo,
but
do you
now
have representation?
We have representations on boards, all the boards where the legislation stipulates that the private sector has a representative. I think generally we
It comes from the organization,
yes,
from the
yes,
chamber.
yes, yes.
But for Carnival and business, clearly we have to agree on this, that Carnival is a very profitable, in fact, one of the most profitable period, event, activity for businesses in Grenada. The question,
More than the threat
Should-
of hurricane?
should the business contribute more to Carnival, given their profitability? If you want details on this, I could.
Byron,
but for the
what
time
I
being,
know about the profitability of
well,
the
they
businesses?
are part of the organization. I mean,
They don't give us their
I know that,
financials.
but just from a
We
from-
speculating now.
no, but from
Okay.
your point of view, how you see it, and Chris, you could come in there too. It's a fact. Most businesses, the profitability around Carnival is huge. We have a lot more spending, and some make more money than others. For those in the beverage and other business in particular, and others,
Well, Byron,
should they
I will put on my private sector hat now,
should they
come out as your
contribute
co-host.
more to its cost?
all right. So
More, should
let
they?
me tell
Should
you,
they?
that has been a discussion we have been having since Mr. Collindor was head of Spice Mass,
Okay.
right, chairman of Spice Mass.
Okay. Okay.
And the problem is twofold. Yes, it is a fact that around this period, there's more consumption of beverages, food, and all of that. Even the
Yeah.
small vendor on the side of the street
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
some monies
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The issue have always been the structure. Now, if you want to come to my business and say, listen, Chris Dialli, you doing body paint, and around this time you will sell body paint out of the roof, I expect you to contribute to something to Carnival. And we will say, sure. But tell us what it is we're getting, what is the strategy, how we plan to implement, what it is happening.
Okay.
Is this a 1 year thing? Is this a 3 year strategy? Let us do so. We in business need to understand how we need to plan as we go forward. If you don't have a structure that you're presenting that could be consistent and could hold water in terms of how the financing and what is that, we would do it once and then we won't do it again. So this is part of the problem from the organizers of Carnival. They have to have a structured approach to specific businesses that they see. And then businesses will want, just as how we do when we have international events, we want sole rights, right? So when you are doing international cricket and World Cup cricket, within how much 100 feet of the stadium, you couldn't have a signboard up with a competitor sponsor.
Yeah.
And we don't go there. But that is the approach that has to come to businesses for it to make sense. Because I'll tell you something, in Steel Band, when we were talking to the head of Spice Mass now, Mr. Noel,
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Steel Band is suffering from sponsorships because the current sponsors, say take Koyaba, that sponsors one of the Steel Bands, will tell you that it is around Carnival time, they come for $70,000, $80,000 to help with pan, fix pan, tune pan, bring up tuner. Yeah. It's an expensive thing. And then what am I getting for that $80,000 I invest in pan just for this Carnival season? What am I to get as a business? Does it give me more customers in my hotel? Does it bring, so we need to have that conversation in an environment where the businesses could see a return on investments. Remember, we have to report to our shareholders.
Yeah.
It's not just about marketing and event and so on. Yes, we have a lot more people on the island. You could say the hotel getting more stay during our period. But we must understand when we put in that investment, how it's being returned. And that is essentially what it is, I think.
Just to add to Chris, the whole planning, you're talking about planning, the whole planning of Carnival, when does that begin?
Yeah, well,
How do you ensure that you maximize revenue generation from the people that come? What memorabilia do you have You know, my chance
Yeah,
when it used to be
we are putting memorabilia, horn,
CD,
jab, jab.
horn,
right?
jab, jab.
Yeah.
Used to be CDs
Jab, jab nation.
some time ago where people asking they want a CD with a calypso, and whatnot.
Yeah.
What do we have as a problem? How can we make carnival more tangible, right, and profitable?
Is one of the discussions that we had to constantly keep having. And I mean, when Mr. Noel was here, he did say there's a lot of things they're trying to change and develop over the years to come. And hopefully we could get to there. I mean, Trinidad is one of the few islands, Trinidad and Brazil, that have commercialized carnival to the extent that it brings in huge monies. And we're not close to that. Look at Calypso. Our Calypsos have gone international in the last 10 years. The amount of international exposure our music have had. And I suppose this is where the government is trying to introduce the orange sector to get the creativity more commercialized, and you know, the guys and girls in that could make it a business. Because we have had all this international exposure, but what can we say truly the country and the artists have gained? And that is a problem. So it's even that attaches itself to carnival that needs to be properly done, you know, and protected under the laws that we have, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of pieces that need to fit into this thing, and hopefully this orange part of the economy that we want to develop could try to bring those things together and get it. You know?
So the answer to your question is yes, they are willing to do more, but it has to be a dialogue, it has to be a conversation.
It will take time.
In a structural environment.
Jamaica wasn't known for reggae until Bob Marley went international. And then they commercialized it significantly. So all the other artists that he brought with him were recognized and got to make a living out of their music. You know, so it's not a thing that could happen overnight.
We are clearly coming to the end of time. Pettifor, is there any final closing remarks? Anything you want to say to us?
No, I want to ask her one thing before you ask her to close.
Go ahead, please, Chris.
How does it feel as to be the president of an organization like CARICHAM?
Network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce.
I mean, I'm not talking from the point of view of your ability to technically handle the position. I'm talking from the point of view that you are a woman in a space where it was dominated by men, but you believed you, as head of this organization, could make an impact. How does it feel to be in that position?
Chris, I've always been in situations where it's been dominated by men. This is no different. For me, I have a job to do. I'm going to do a good job of it. I don't feel any particular way as such, you know. I just see it as an opportunity to make a difference and to just go and do it.
And you have a second as a woman as well.
Yes.
I think it's an interesting thing, and the producer is going to give us 2 more minutes. But you raise an interesting point, the whole gender issue, because the IMF executive board raised this question. It says, it said that it wants to enhance competitiveness, but Grenada should increase the domestic value added to tourism. But the point I want to make, he says, should promote gender equality, incentivize female labor force participation. How do we do that? How? Because this is advice to the state. It says that this is an issue. It flagged this as an issue. And improve labor skills. But the question of promote gender equality, incentivize female labor force participation. What's the challenge there? What's your interpretation of this? What should be done?
Well, historically, our business environment is dominated by men, and women have always had played a second role, and of course the compensation is very different in terms of what a man receives and what a woman receives. And Chris, we won't go down that road. No. Right? But,
I am not the best person to talk about that, because where my wife sits, so I won't talk about that.
But it's something that I think with the minimum wage and the reviewing of salaries, etc. And in some places you've had reassessment of roles and jobs right? And also women demanding more, right? But I'll tell you something, whether we like it or not, the female energy is on the rise. So the IMF could say in December it's going to happen.
Female energy is on the rise.
No,
I think that's a take home for me today, clearly.
I
Because
fully
Chris,
agree.
Pedro, when you look at it, you look at, and I mean, they started a while now, the graduating classes in UE and wherever you go, it's dominated by females. I mean, by women.
But I just want to add that it's not
yeah.
about women taking over
No.
and men taking a secondary role.
Yeah.
It's about a balance.
A balance, yeah.
And I always say that if you have a board that was traditionally dominated by male, and you introduce 2 or 3 females on the board, their perspective is so different because women have an eye for detail that men don't, and that is a fact. And you will see that what they contribute changes the complexion of the conversation at board level.
Yeah.
And I say that not because of anything, I just think it is a reality, and we need to encourage more of it.
What Chris is saying there is very important, Byron, and you could take this away too. The problem we had before, apart from you talking about salaries, it's not about that, it's about the energy. The female and male are supposed to operate hand in hand for us to get the maximum that we could get. When you have more men, you have an imbalance. You have more women, you have an imbalance. So you need to have the balance of the 2 energies in order for us to
My
make
producer just
progress.
reminded me that there's a popular calypso that's sung by a female, women beating up on women. Women beating men.
Yeah. I mean, if they're beating us with love, I'll take that any day. But I mean, generally, I think our women, our women are proving to me, our women are exposing themselves and showing what they are capable of.
Yeah.
And I think we as men need to embrace that and not look at it from a fearful point of view. And take it with what it brings.
It's a positive
and positive thing.
positive
Yes.
vibes.
So it's just about that for me.
Pedro, I want to thank you very much for being our special guest this evening. We heard a lot and we're very thankful. A lot of very useful information. Chris, any final word?
No, I didn't congratulate Ms. Lewis on her ascension to the chair. I know she will make us proud, and she will give it her best. And I mean, I look forward to the things that you will come forward from CARICHAM.
You would see it.
Great.
Viewers, that's all the time we have. Good evening. We'll see you next week. We thank you very much. We note our technical staff for their invaluable support this evening. Have a good week. It is holiday weekend. It's, in fact, yesterday was the anniversary of abolition slavery. But the holiday is, in fact, this weekend. Be safe. We'll see you next Wednesday,
And
same
no
time.
violence,
And no
please.
violence, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye-bye.
No.